we've seen that when we've done a really good partnership with somebody like Moby or 21 Pilots, and they've released their music through WeTransfer, if we push that socially, it works as a marketing tool.
Do you want to impact the world and still turn a profit? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Growth Everywhere. This is the show where you'll find real conversations with real entrepreneurs. They'll share everything from their biggest struggle to the exact strategies they use on a daily basis. So if you're ready for a value-packed interview, listen on. Here's your host, Eric Sue.
Before we jump into today's interview, if you guys could leave a review and a rating and also subscribe as well, that would be a huge help to the podcast. So if you actually enjoy the content and you'd like to hear more of it, please support us by leaving us a review and subscribe to the podcast as well. Thanks so much. All right, everybody. Today we have Damian Bradfield, who is the president and CMO of WeTransfer, which is the largest file transferring service in the world. Damian, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and then we'll go from there.
So my name's Damian. I'm British. I spent the last 10 years living in Amsterdam and the last year living in Los Angeles, having moved out here for WeTransfer to set up our US operations. 2 kids, a dog, very happily married, and loving being in the sunshine as opposed to the rain and the clouds that Amsterdam is generally sitting under.
Oh, really? You know what's interesting? I was actually in Amsterdam in May, and it looked beautiful the whole time. So I guess I got lucky.
That's the new summer. You've got to go in May and September. Don't go in the summer.
Oh, got it. Okay, interesting. Anyway, we could talk about travel all day, but yeah, I guess around WeTransfer, I mean, how does the company work? How do you guys make money?
Business is really simple. So we have 2 revenue streams. The first and the oldest is advertising. So since 2009, we basically changed the landscape for the advertising market and created these full screen wallpapers, we call them, so that they dominate the entire experience. So 50% of our revenue comes from advertising, and the other 50% comes from subscriptions.
Great. Okay. And so how does this business looking today? I mean, how many customers do you have? And I guess, what are the growth rates looking like?
It's a very healthy business. So we've, since 2009, we've grown very, very steadily to now 42 million active users per month.
Wow.
We're in pretty much every country in the world. So I think we say we're in 194 countries. Our home turf is Europe. So where we're a household name, where we're really well known, where we generate a big chunk of our business is really within the European market. And the reason that we moved out here is because the US for us is obviously huge, but it's also our fastest growing, and it's the best converting market from free to plus. So the consumer or the users here are the most responsive to the sort of premium features that we offer within WeTransfer.
Interesting. So what are some of those premium services?
So the free service is super simple, right? There's no sign up, no login. You can just use the service and send pretty much unlimited files to anybody that you have an email address for. And in return for using the service for free, we just serve these non-obtrusive, we try to make them really beautiful ads in the background. The premium experience is basically yours. So, it would be eric.wetransfer.com, your own imagery in the background. So the experience that you send when sending and the experience for your recipient is a really beautifully crafted and curated space that all looks like you or the work that you're doing. And it's about larger file sizes, storage, social sharing features, password protection, all that sort of stuff. So there's sort of a handful of extra add-ons that come with the Plus background. And the majority of people that choose to use Plus, or the subscription service as we call it, are an awful lot of freelancers, photographers, creatives, small businesses that are really looking for that branded experience, to make sure that when they're sending presentations, videos, whatever, the experience that the recipient gets, which is often a client, feels like it's coming from you, and it's as beautifully crafted as the work that it is that you're actually putting into the transfer itself.
Awesome. And I'm assuming you have many different plans. So I guess probably a simpler question would be, what's the average revenue per user?
We don't really ever talk about revenue. I mean, we're more than happy to talk about the number of users that we have, and we're very happy to talk about the amount of inventory that we give away and those sort of things.
Sure, let's talk about that.
Okay. So we have 42 million uniques per month. We have been growing steadily year on year. Our business is supported by these two revenue streams. But the thing that I think most people don't know is that we give away 30% of all of our ad inventory to support the arts. So since 2009, when we first started the service, as I said in the beginning, we had this full screen advertising platform, and everyone was producing banners, and no one was interested in having to make another sort of piece of creative to put onto the only site in the world that had this full screen advertising model. So we started to give a lot of it away, and we had friends that were photographers or illustrators or, that sort of thing. So we gave it to them, and people loved seeing that, discovering stuff through us. So over the years, and fast forward to today, we give away 30%, which this year equates to over 5 billion impressions, to support up-and-coming musicians, charities, startups, a lot of the creative community in the arts. In LA, we've been supporting the Hammer Museum. We're working with Mocha. We would like to kickstart something shortly with LACMA on the top end of the scale. But the bottom end, we over the years probably helped more than 200 musicians, reach an audience that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. We've helped tons of illustrators and photographers, be discovered or get some recognition that normally you'd have to pay for, or hope that a journalist, would pick you up and write about.
Awesome. So 30%, I feel like there's a story behind it because that's such a big chunk of cash. So where did the 30% number come from? What's the story behind it?
It used to be 50%.
Wow.
And, as the business has grown and scaled, obviously our costs have grown and scaled too. And we were in a fortunate position that the advertising market had changed, and we've managed to attract, major companies. So there's pretty much not an advertiser or a media company out there that doesn't buy against WeTransfer today. So the demand on our ad inventory just became bigger, and also the demand on hosting costs became bigger. So we had to reduce it. So it went down from 50 to 30%. It's not a hard and fast rule. I mean, if we have, some amazing projects, of which, we've had some pretty phenomenal partnerships happening this year, it really depends on how much storytelling we have at any one moment and how many projects there are.
Awesome. Great. So just to simplify it for people, I mean,
yes.
like you mentioned, if I'm a small business owner and I want to send some PDFs or some videos over to somebody, I can password protect it, right? So I can,
yes.
And then, there's a branded experience as well. So it just makes it look a little more professional, right? That's kind of the simplification of it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, 42 million unique users. Let's go back to the early days. I mean, how did you go about getting your first million users?
Everything that we've done has been organic. So we bootstrapped the company. We didn't have any funding in the beginning. Everything basically came through the original group of sort of founders who put in their own money and their own time. And we were holding down multiple jobs to basically pay the rent and pay the few salaries that we had to pay. The beautiful thing about WeTransfer is if you upload something and you send it to 3 people, back in 2009, probably one of those 3 became a user. So 1 in 3 recipients became a user. So our organic growth was just phenomenal. It's funny you ask, because the one thing that we can vividly remember back in 2010 that really spun things for us was StumbleUpon.
Oh.
And it still exists. I didn't know that it was even around anymore, but StumbleUpon is still there. And I think back in 2010 it had quite a bit of traction. So
it did, yeah.
If a site was picked up on StumbleUpon and sort of spat out, you would know it. So there was a moment when StumbleUpon sort of, found us, or however it worked, spat us out, and we gained 200,000 users pretty much overnight. It wasn't really even a gradual thing. It was pretty much overnight. And that boost, I have to say, was one of the things that really triggered, a lot more of the virality for us.
Okay.
Because at that time, if 1 in 3 recipients became a user, you can do the math.
So you got 200,000. Is it 200,000 subscribers from StumbleUpon?
Yeah, not subscribers, but 200,000 users. 200,000
users. Okay, and then that led to 600. What you got like another 1 in 3, right?
In combination with in Holland, the company is Dutch, right? I don't know if I said that, but it started in Amsterdam, and the startup community is reasonably big, but it's a village. Amsterdam compared to New York, or Amsterdam compared to LA is tiny.
Right.
So there were a handful of startups that were doing some stuff at the time, and the startup community was, relatively small. And there was a huge desire in Amsterdam, as I think there is in Berlin and other places, to want startups to succeed, to make, the next Silicon Valley and to do something. So we had amazing goodwill from the Dutch press and the Dutch community. And one person in particular who's made a big difference in our lives was a guy called Werner Vogels, who's the CTO of Amazon, who's one of the only public-facing people for Amazon and undoubtedly one of the most influential people within Amazon. And he helped us massively in migrating from what we had in the early days, which was a site built in Flash, hosted on some local servers, and to migrate to AWS. And that came from real goodwill. It was him being Dutch and wanting some success stories to come out of the Dutch market.
How did you even meet him?
Werner is hugely ingrained in the Dutch startup community. If you have a startup and you've got a little bit of traction, or you've turned up to a few events, Werner will be there. He's a very generous, very committed guy to seeing, I think, a lot of young people succeed.
So before we go any further, I just wanted to tell you about a problem that entrepreneurs have been coming to me with. They don't know what they need to do next to grow their business, or they don't have the right resources to execute on marketing needs. Oftentimes, they don't have a marketing strategy, or they don't know who or what to hire for. If this sounds like something that you've been dealing with, I have a solution for you. Single Grain is a growth marketing agency ran by yours truly that has worked with venture-backed startups to Fortune 500 companies to help solve their marketing issues. Our strong points are in SEO and paid advertising, and if you need help in other areas, we're always happy to tap into our network of highly vetted vendors that we can even help manage for you. So there's no need to stress yourself out trying to find the right people for the job, because we've got you covered. So if you're interested in this, just go to growtheverywhere.com/help to get more information. Once again, that's growtheverywhere.com/help. That's awesome. Okay, so backing up a second, when you mentioned, 1 in 3 people, 1 in 3 users, I guess my real question is, was there some kind of referral mechanism where people could find out about WeTransfer if somebody transfers something? Like, what happened there?
No, it was purely organic. There was no referral mechanic. Dropbox at the time had a fantastic member gets member scheme. We didn't have any such mechanism in place at all. We were totally reliant on, the quality of the product that we were putting out there and the differentiation and the way that it looked. And you have to remember, back in 2010, the focus was very much on technology. So, we had the CTO, or the developer, was the rock star. Those guys were building technology that everyone was excited about, and no one was really that bothered with your interface or user design. We were one of the few sites out there that was mainly, focused on user design and experience, and technology wasn't an afterthought. We just wanted it to be invisible. So we had quite a bit of standout because we weren't the guys talking about the complexity of the code or anything else. We were really just focused on making sure it was accessible to everybody. And it really meant that our service could be used by somebody who was 12 or 90. You didn't need to create an account. You didn't need to do anything. If you wanted to send something, just send it.
Interesting.
And on top of that, you have to remember that our competition at that time were Rapid Share, Mega Upload, a lot of companies that were not necessarily the best sort of type of companies in the world, not necessarily doing the greatest work. And they were all getting shut down. Their business models were based on, an openness towards piracy, and the film industry, the music industry, and everybody, was working pretty hard to close those guys down. So we were also in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, being very piracy-averse, and we wanted nothing to do with pornography, and we wanted nothing to do with the illegal distribution of films or anything like that.
Right.
So we were just in the right place at the right time, I think.
Got it. Yeah. Timing is one of the most important factors, right?
Absolutely.
Great. So, okay. So you talked about how you got to the first million or so. What's working for you today in terms of customer acquisition? Just one thing that's working really, really well.
It's never just one thing, but if I try to distill it down to a single thing that I think is a big differentiator for us, it probably comes down to trust. I think that the experience you have from using WeTransfer is one that is quite revolutionary online, that we don't try to lock you in by, forcing you to give away any information or slowing bandwidth down or anything like that. We have a net promoter score of 87%.
Huh.
And I think this is down to a few of those elements combined, that generally when somebody uses WeTransfer and they're recommended to use it by somebody else, the sentiment and the response is so positive that it will generally trigger, fantastic referrals, just word of mouth or email referrals. And, that's probably working the hardest for us in terms of the long-term outreach and the long-term, client acquisition. We don't spend massively on marketing. So we do a fair bit, which is obviously the 30% stuff, which is about, highlighting different projects and making sure that people see and experience creativity online. But a big chunk of what we're doing really goes against highlighting how people produce things. So highlighting how Kamasi Washington is a very big jazz musician, how, we help him produce a film. That film is then showcased at the Whitney Museum in New York. And we try to demonstrate how, using a tool like WeTransfer helps enable that creative process and that workflow. We don't lean very heavily on email marketing. In fact, we try to limit the amount of, hammering that we do or email reach out to people to try to make sure that they don't feel bombarded. Where we do spend a fair bit of time is on social. So we've seen that when we've done a really good partnership with somebody like Moby or 21 Pilots, and they've released their music through WeTransfer, if we push that socially, it works as a marketing tool. People will go to the site, download the album that Moby has given away, and obviously talk about it, refer other people, share, discuss.
Interesting. So how do you know, like Moby, for example, these other companies, how do you know these are the right partners to go after? Because it sounds like, this is not a customer acquisition thing that usually people talk about.
So Moby is an artist. He's a musician.
Oh, I thought it was M-O-B-I. Okay, Moby, the musician. Got it. Never mind. I get it.
So a lot of those relationships, to be honest, whether it is a company or whether it is Moby the musician, is all about personal relationships. We don't go into any sort of partnership looking at on a short-term basis. It's got to be a long-term thing, because although there's this perception around tech that it's super fast and we can develop and iterate incredibly quickly, if you're building for the long term and you're trying to build trust, it takes time to build out an experience that people really can enjoy spending time with and happy to spend time with. So we spend a huge amount of time, meeting people, doing real FaceTime, trying to understand, what they would like to do and how they would best like to get their message out there in the world. And then really trying to facilitate that and make sure that we can enable that rather than, manipulate it and try to construct it in a fashion that suits us.
What's one big struggle you faced while growing this business?
It's probably scale. We were bootstrapped until 2015, and it meant that, we had a very small team. I think in 2014, we were probably just 20 people or something like that, and supporting a business that, I can't remember exactly the numbers, but we were doing in excess of 25 million uniques a month. You would never have a company that scale in the US with such a small team. And it was only in 2015 that we took investment. In 2016, we got rid of all of the other companies that we were involved with to sort of keep the lights on and focus purely on WeTransfer. And I would say that, through the course of this year, we've gone through significant change in scaling the team. And we're now at 82 people in Amsterdam and 10 out here in LA. Our struggle has been, getting enough people and the right people on board fast enough really to keep up with the business and keep up with the ambition that we have. And I'd say we were slow to that. This year's been fantastic. Next year's looking better.
Got it. Sounds like you guys had a really healthy business. Yeah. So, when did you guys start it again?
2009.
2009. Okay. So you waited, 6 years to raise or so. Why did you guys decide to raise money?
I think being based in Holland, there's some amazingly positive things, and then there's some things less positive. The great thing about starting a company in Holland, and I would recommend it to anybody, is that it's very pragmatic. The focus really is on being, lean and getting to like an MVP as fast as you possibly can with as little resource and little money as you need. The issue then is once you've got something and it's got some stickiness and you've really got some traction, is then taking it to the next level. And in Holland, it's just not the case that there is, quite as much ambition as there is in a country like the US. And I think the great thing about where we are right now is you've got the best of sort of both worlds. You've got the fantastically productive, pragmatic Dutch team with what we're building out here in the US in marketing, sales, customer support, business development. And I think those two combined is an amazing combination. If it was just the Netherlands on its own, I think, we would have struggled. And, I think we thought that we could probably do it all on our own for quite a while. And slowly over the years, we began to realize actually, we're not very good at doing this bit. We need somebody more operational. This year we've gone through some massive changes and we brought on, a new CEO. We've just hired a COO. We've hired a new head of our advertising business. We brought in, a couple of people from Red Bull Marketing to run marketing out here. And we've just scaled it all up a little bit. And I think, before maybe it was ego, but we thought we could probably do it all on our own,
Yep, makes sense. What's one new tool that you've added in the last year that's added a lot of value? So it could be like an Evernote, for example.
Well, the things that we've added are all small, so it's not something that I'd say, this is like the revolutionary thing we've done the last year.
Could be yourself too.
It definitely wasn't me. What we're gonna add towards the end of this year is a bit that I'm really excited about. So we've got two new things that I'll skirt around because I can't go into too much detail. But there are two new things coming out that I think are really exciting because they will help, I think, shape a lot more of the sort of the creative workflow for a lot of people. And it's not just for creative people. I mean it for creative minds or anybody that's producing stuff. Where we've been fantastically strong is with our web-based product. Like it's sort of, steadfast and solid. Where we haven't been that strong is historically been in mobile. And I'm really excited towards, something that we're going to bring out later on this year that will hopefully fill that mobile gap where I'd say we've not been the strongest, but I think we will be come October, November.
Great. What's one must-read book you'd recommend to everyone?
Although I'm not a huge fan of the author anymore, given his political stance, I think Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 is one of the best business books I've ever read.
Awesome. Great book. And what's funny? Once you said the political thing, I immediately knew it was him. Cool. Well, Damian, this has been great. What's the best way for people to find you online?
Twitter. Probably respond best to DMs via Twitter.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Damian, this has been great again. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Everywhere. If you loved what you heard, be sure to head back to growtheverywhere.com for today's show notes and a ton of additional resources. But before you go, hit the subscribe button to avoid missing out on next week's value-packed interview. Enjoy the rest of your week, and remember to take action and continue growing.